So I'm about to do something that's either completely brilliant or completely insane. I'm building my next product live here on YouTube. So I'm going to run a real time experiment in my business with no safety net. I'm not like doing a beta behind closed doors. It's just me and my framework and whatever happens when I apply my own advice to my own business. So here's the twist. If this works, you get to see exactly how to do it yourself and decide whether or not it'll work for you. And if it fails spectacularly, well, at least you'll get to see what not to do, right? So I'm Laura Zovelson, and this is the Gen Expert Show, where I help independent consultants and agency owners get off the revenue roller coaster. And over the next 8 to 12 weeks, you're going to get to watch me prove whether my client engine system can grow my followers and deliver inbound leads. So, what exactly am I building? The client engine is a system that I've been developing based on what I learned from growing my own businesses, running $1 million brand strategy agency, and then watching what actually works for the clients that I work with. So the premise is simple. Most consultants are already doing something, right? Posting tips on LinkedIn or writing newsletters, or maybe they have a podcast about business growth, whatever. But none of it is actually connected together. And none of it sort of puts the building blocks in place that allow them to become the expert in their niche. And since they don't see results, and since it is time consuming, they usually don't stick with it. The client engine fixes that with three integrated components. The first one is your point of view. This is where we combine your unique framework, your hot takes, and your personal stories into a clear position that makes you unforgettable. The second piece is your platform. So instead of putting all your energy into social media that like evaporates in 2 to 3 days or worse, 2 to 3 hours, right? We focus on creating connected, consistent, long form content. And that's going to turn into this body of work that pre educates your prospects, not only on what you think, but how you think. So this could be a newsletter, a podcast, a YouTube channel like this one. It could be a blog. Okay. And then the last piece of the puzzle is pathways. This is where we leverage that connecting long form content and we break it up into smaller pieces. So that's what's going to get you noticed and get you discovered and drive people back to that long form content that lives on the platform. So you're no longer just posting random tips, you're posting strategic content and it all points in the same direction. So, if you want the full explanation of how that entire system works, the step by step walkthrough, I will put a link to that video in the description. But look, this is where this is going to get interesting. I'm not just teaching this system here on YouTube, I'm testing it live with two simultaneous experiments. All right. The first one is the client engine in action. So, I'm going to use my own LinkedIn newsletter as the laboratory, and I'll be connecting all the content to my point of view. So, this client engine is the framework I'm going to use. My opinions that I believe that long form content is the real differentiator and trust builder, and that you can use AI tools to make it 100% possible to pull this off as a solopreneur and create personalized content that's not crap. And I'll be telling stories and giving examples from my 25 years of experience with content marketing. All right. So then I'm going to use my LinkedIn newsletter as the platform. And for the next 12 weeks, every single piece of content is going to be connected to that point of view I just described to you. And then all of the pathway content I'm going to put on LinkedIn and on threads. And that's going to be intended to drive traffic back to the LinkedIn newsletter. And here's how I'm going to measure whether or not it's working, right? I'm going to look at my LinkedIn follower growth. I'm going to look at my newsletter subscriber growth, and I'm going to look at the priority list signups for this program, the Client Engine program. Okay. And I'm going to share the numbers with that with you every single week. So here's where we stand when I shot this. I have 1,133 LinkedIn followers. I have 164 LinkedIn newsletter subscribers. And as of taping, I don't have any signups on my priority list because the landing page just went live today. So I'm going to be updating you on those numbers every week. And then test number two I'm running is actually just to see market demand, right? So while I'm running the LinkedIn experiment that shows you the outcomes and whether or not the client engine works, I'm also running a test within a test because if the results are successful, well, I'm hoping that people get interested in installing the client engine in their own businesses. And so then the priority list signups are an indicator of whether or not there's enough market demand for me to go ahead and build this out, right? So here's what I think makes this kind of fun. The LinkedIn experiment is going to test whether or not my client engine system actually works. And then the YouTube build in public is going to test whether or not people actually want to learn it. So that's two different questions, two different tests, and a whole lot of possible outcomes. So here's what I'm actually thinking. I've been talking about the power of searchable long form content as a trust builder and a brand differentiator for years. But I've never actually been able to solve the problem of the time it actually takes to implement something like that consistently for a solo or a small business. But I think AI is changing all of that. So here's the reason that I've been taking a break here on YouTube and the podcast is because I needed to go build some tools and figure out how to talk about this and also to follow my own advice, which is that you need to actually talk to your potential customers before you build anything. So what I did is in the off month, I actually ran a focus group with consultants. And they actually all reinforced that the pain points I'm trying to fix are accurate. The revenue roller coaster, that's painful for just about everybody who's running their own business. Not having enough time for marketing. Even the marketing consultants, right? It's the so whole the shoemaker's kids have no shoes, right? And then most consultants and agency owners I found did totally get the advantage of having their own IP, like a framework or a methodology, and yet they have never articulated one. For it was kind of a bunch of reasons, ranging from never getting around to it to imposter syndrome over, why does my approach automatically make me an expert? So they liked the idea of a system that would solve all of those things. And so I took that as a plus and I went forward. And then I took the idea and I fed it to four different AI models, just stress testing the idea, right? And the results I got back said that they thought that the program was pretty solid. But then again, we also know that AI is kind of a huge suck up, right? And it can hallucinate. So the real test is right here, right now, whether or not the client engine works in the wild and whether or not people are interested. So, my hypothesis is that most experts can get off the roller coaster for good. But here's what you have to do. First, create content that connects with your audience and tease you up as someone who has credibility and can think differently, right? That's what makes people want to hire you. The second thing is that you need to create this content that builds a tight body of work around the problem you solve. It's not just important for understanding and establishing that you know what you're doing, but it's also going to be important for helping AI to find you as search transitions in that direction. And then finally, you have to figure out how to do this consistently. Otherwise, you're going to confuse your audience and you kind of look like a flake. So those three things feel kind of straightforward. But I think the reason that most people have trouble implementing them into the business is because most content efforts aren't strategic and they're not systematized. And so that makes them not efficient by definition, right? So content creation and personal branding are two of the first things that get just dropped to the bottom of the priority list every time you get busy. So, look, in order to get clients, you've got to connect with your audience. But given the level of attention scarcity these days, you've just got to be consistent about it. You've got to create that connection again and again and again. And you've got to pull them closer and closer to you. And in order to do that, you've got to be saying something that's different enough to make them care. So, you're not going to get notice if you just pop in for three posts and then pop out for 6 months. You can look at it like this. What we want for client getting is to be consistent and connected, and you have to have both. So let's go ahead and throw this idea onto a content marketing matrix, right? A four-box model, because everybody needs a four-box model, right? So look, down here, we have the people who have no articulated framework, likely because they don't have a well-defined niche or they may not be doing any marketing. They just hoping the referrals show up. We're just going to call them the beige splotch, all right? They just fade into the background. And then over here, we have the people who have a framework or they're good at telling stories or they have a hot opinions on things, but they're not talking about it enough to get any advantage with it because every time they get busy, they stop marketing. So they're entertaining people. They might have a lot of followers, but they're not getting any clients from that. And then up here, we have the people who manage to post regularly, but it's kind of all over the map. So it's not doing them a lot of good because it's not connected to anything that convinces people to hire them. It's not connected to what they sell, not their stories, not their opinions. So they're doing all the work, but it's not building trust or differentiating them from the crowd. So here's where we want to be, right? Up here. This is where we're memorable and remarkable. We want to be like Seth Godin's Purple Cow, all right? We want to be creating high connection content using our point of view, and we want to do it consistently so it creates an advantage. So, my client engine strategy is what can actually get you into that box, right? It starts with that point of view framework. It shows you exactly how to create connection content by combining your unique methods or frameworks, your stories, and then your hot takes or your opinions. And that's what builds know, like, trust. So people learn what you do and they remember you. And then the platform and the pathways pieces, that's what makes sure that your marketing works together and that it gets consumed and that it gets people to engage with you. So that way your network stays warm and your pipeline stays full. All right. And then finally, the AI tools facilitate the entire thing so that creating client getting content becomes a reasonable task for someone who's a solopreneur or a micro company. But I know we're in the middle of a trust recession. And so I know there's a really good chance that you don't believe me for a second that this can work for your business. So that's why I'm doing this test that I mentioned earlier. This is how I'm going to get you some proof. I started putting content generated by the Client Engine Strategy on LinkedIn on September 11th. And as a quick review, right? This is my framework or method. This is the client engine. Okay. My hot takes are my opinions about AI and content marketing. And the stories and experiences that I'm sharing within those newsletters come from my 25 years of building companies and teaching entrepreneurship and consulting. Okay. Now, my platform in this case, I've chosen my LinkedIn newsletter. And my CTA is going to be to sign up for the priority list or subscribe to the newsletter. And then finally, my pathways are going to be LinkedIn posts and vertical video on LinkedIn, and then threads posts that drive traffic back to the newsletter. And then to make it interesting, I'll be doing color commentary on the whole thing here on YouTube. So there's going to be a new video every week where I still talk about growing your business, but I'm also going to be documenting what's working and what's not, give you a behind the scenes look at the AI tools I'm building, and actually making real time adjustments to the system based on the feedback that I get. All right. And I'm going to share everything, right? Follower growth, engagement rates, the time I spend creating content, because I'm looking for that to go down as I progress over the next 3 months, and the conversion weights to my priority list. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So why does any of this matter to you? Well, I think if the revenue roller coaster is a problem for you, and you can find a way to get off, well, don't you even want to try it? And I don't just want to just ask you to believe, right? I want you to see it work. I want you to see the system in action. I want you to see me troubleshoot problems in real time. So you're going to see which AI tools actually save time and which ones were a waste of time. You get a front row seat and you get to make your own decision about whether this approach is doable for you and whether or not it's worth it for you to put in the work to become a recognized voice in your niche. So if you are tired of putting stuff out there and not seeing it turn into clients, and you're frustrated with the up and down revenue that goes along with that, I'm going to guess that you probably know that you could make real strides forward if you built a personal brand and you started leading and trying to become the go to person in your niche. But I'm also guessing that you think that you don't have time for that. So this experiment is designed to answer whether or not there's a better way. And here's what I'm risking, right? If this doesn't work, you're going to see it fail publicly. But if it does work, you're going to see me prove that using a marketing strategy like the client engine can actually generate leads without like sucking up your entire life. And so I'm going to bet that transparency beats perfection, that showing you my process is more valuable than just showing you the results, and that me working without a net is maybe a little more entertaining than you just listening to me talk about it. So here's how you can follow along with this whole thing, all right? First of all, subscribe to this YouTube channel. I will be making updates weekly. Second, follow me and subscribe to my newsletter on LinkedIn because that's where you're going to see the content that the system generates, okay? And then finally, I'd love it if you drop me a comment. Tell me what you want to see. What questions you have about the process, even if you think this is build in public thing is a good idea or not, okay? So look, this is going to be like the most transparent product development process you've ever seen or the most public failure, right? Either way, I think it's going to be interesting. So thanks for hanging out today, and I will see you next week with my first real update on the results.